That night, the hospital auditorium was full, but you could hear every breath. Cameras were ready. The banner with the words Medical Innovation Award shone under the lights, and on the big screen was a photo that did not belong to him. It was her work, her idea, her discovery. But it was his name. In the shadows at the back of the hall, a woman in a simple nurse's uniform stood very still, watching the man on stage adjust his tie. He smiled, confident, already tasting the applause for the breakthrough that had saved lives during the last outbreak. He had no idea that tonight would be the last night anyone believed him. Hello, dear friends. I'm Laura Bennett, and this is a new story about revenge and justice. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more emotional life stories. Before the awards, the cameras, and the speeches, Nora Campbell's life was much quieter. She was 53, a senior nurse in the infectious disease ward of St. Augustine Hospital. Her mornings began in a small kitchen with a chipped blue kettle and the smell of toast and orange marmalade. She liked her tea strong, with a slice of lemon. While the water boiled, the old radio on the counter played soft classical music, and the wooden floor creaked under her slippers as she moved. Her apartment was modest but warm, crocheted blankets on the sofa, framed photos of her grown children on the walls, a tiny balcony with potted herbs she used for cooking. When she opened the window, she could hear birds and distant traffic, the sounds of a city waking up. At work, Nora was known for her calm hands and steady voice. Patients trusted her more than some doctors. She remembered birthdays, families, and fears. She had been there through epidemics, false alarms, and long winter nights when the ward felt like a separate world. The hospital itself was a place of contrasts. Bright white corridors, the smell of disinfectant and coffee from the vending machines, the constant beep of monitors. Nora moved through it like someone who knew every crack in the floor. And above everyone, in the corner office with glass walls, was Dr. Victor Hales, the charismatic head physician. He was in his early 60s, with silver hair and a perfect smile. Patients adored him, the board respected him, and journalists loved quoting him. He called Nora my best nurse when visitors were around, and she always answered with a polite smile. It was during the winter flu season that the first signs of something new appeared, something that would change both their lives. The ward had been unusually full that year. Patients came in with high fevers, severe coughs, and a worrying pattern of complications. Standard treatments didn't work as well as they should have. Nora noticed things, patterns in symptoms, small reactions to certain drugs, the details that people who actually stood at the bedside every day could see. One night, while charting, she saw that patients who received an older, almost forgotten antiviral in a slightly adjusted dose improved faster. At first, she thought it was coincidence. Then she saw it again, and again. Nora began keeping careful notes. She stayed after shifts to review charts, highlighting improvements, documenting side effects, comparing lab results. She spoke to a friendly pharmacist, who confirmed that the drug was safe but rarely used anymore. She took her findings to Dr. Hales. He listened with a rehearsed expression of interest as she laid out her observations, the charts, the timelines. "Yes," Nora replied, her voice steady. "It's not a miracle cure, but it's significant." He nodded. "Leave your notes with me." For a moment, she felt relief. This was how it should work. The nurse who saw something, the doctor who had the authority to implement it. Weeks passed. Patients continued to improve under the adjusted protocol, now quietly adopted on Nora's insistence among several doctors she trusted. But she heard nothing from Dr. Hales. Then, one morning, she saw a hospital newsletter in the break room. "Head physician leads innovative treatment protocol," the headline read. Underneath was a photo of Dr. Hales in his white coat, arms crossed, speaking confidently about his new approach to treating the current wave of infections. He described the very combination Nora had suggested. There was no mention of her. Nora stared at the article, the words blurring. "He must have forgotten," her colleague murmured. Nora tried to believe that. She knocked on Dr. Hales's door that afternoon. "Doctor, I saw the newsletter," she said carefully. "You used the protocol we discussed. I was hoping perhaps I could be included in the notes?" He smiled, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. "Nora, you know how these things go. Nurses observe, doctors formalize. You did excellent work, and I appreciate it, but the board and the press expect a single name. But the idea, the data, came from the collective experience of the ward," he cut in smoothly. "You were just the first to mention it. Don't make this about credit." The words hit like a cold slap. Over the following month, journalists came to the hospital. They interviewed Dr. Hales about his breakthrough. He appeared on local TV, talking about thinking outside the box and using all his years of experience. Grants were mentioned, awards, perhaps. Inside the ward, Nora continued to work. Her colleagues whispered, some outraged on her behalf, others too afraid for their jobs to say anything publicly. The final blow came when she received an email from administration. Due to restructuring of responsibilities, Nora's educational hours and research participation were being reassigned. In simple terms, she was being quietly pushed away from any role that could give her recognition. At home, in her small kitchen, she sat with a cup of tea that had gone cold and felt something precious crumble inside. It wasn't just about pride. It was about justice, about truth. For the first time in years, Nora considered leaving the hospital altogether. But another part of her, the part that had stayed through countless night shifts and emergencies, refused. If he had stolen her work to climb higher, she thought, then he had climbed onto a very thin branch, and branches could break. Nora didn't shout. She didn't file a complaint immediately or confront him in front of others. She knew how that would look. One nurse against the beloved head physician. She would be labeled emotional, jealous, unstable. Instead, she began to collect. She still had her original notes, dated, detailed, with patient IDs, times and drug doses. She had early emails she had sent to a junior doctor suggesting the protocol, with timestamps before any official announcement. Quietly, she began to make copies of anything relevant, on paper and on an encrypted flash drive. She spoke to the pharmacist again, who remembered their conversation. "You asked about that dosage weeks before it became policy," he said. He agreed to write a statement. She talked off the record with 2 doctors who had started using the protocol because of her suggestions. The turning point came one evening when she overheard a conversation in the corridor. Dr. Hales was speaking with a representative from a pharmaceutical company. The man was praising him for the innovative use of their older drug and hinting at a potential speaking tour, sponsored by them, to share his expertise at conferences. Nora stepped back into the shadows, her heartbeat loud in her ears. This wasn't just about an internal newsletter anymore. He was using her work to build a national reputation and possibly a very profitable side career. That night, she sat at her small kitchen table with a blank notebook and wrote at the top, "Plan." She listed options: internal complaint, likely buried; anonymous letter, easily dismissed; legal action, expensive, slow. None felt right, until she remembered something her daughter, a journalist, had once told her. "If you ever see real wrongdoing," her daughter had said, "don't yell alone in the dark." A week later, on her day off, Nora took a bus across town to a coffee shop near the office of a medical investigative journalist whose work she'd read in the regional paper. She had emailed her under a pseudonym, simply asking if the journalist had time to hear about potential research fraud at St. The journalist, a woman in her 30s named Maya, arrived with a notebook and cautious eyes. "I don't run hit pieces," she said quietly at the start. "I run stories with evidence. If you're just angry, I have evidence, Nora replied, sliding a folder across the table. Her voice didn't shake. They went through everything. The original notes, the dated emails, the statements from colleagues, the timeline that proved the protocol had been developed on the ward before Hales claimed it as his. Maya asked hard questions. Nora answered them all. When they were done, the journalist leaned back, her expression serious. If I take this on, it won't be quick. I'll need to interview others, request documents, get comment from the hospital and Dr. Hales. It will cause noise. I'm ready for the truth, Nora said. Maya nodded. Then we'll do it. Nora left the cafe lighter than she had felt in months. The plan was in motion. Now she just had to wait and keep her own hands clean. The hospital announcement came first. Emails about the upcoming Regional Innovation Award ceremony, where Dr. Wu's staff were invited to attend. Nora read the email and felt a strange calm settle over her. Maya had been busy. She talked to doctors, pharmacists, and administrative staff. She requested access to policy change records. She left, came back, left again. Nora said little. She simply did her work, quiet, thorough, professional. The night of the ceremony, the auditorium was filled with hospital board members, donors, and local media. A podium stood under the lights, flanked by banners and flower arrangements. Cameras from a regional TV station were set up to broadcast the event. Nora stood near the back, partially in shadow, her nurse's uniform a quiet contrast to the suits and dresses around her. The ceremony began with speeches about dedication, innovation, and leadership. Then the host announced, "And now, the moment we've all been waiting for, the Regional Innovation Award goes to Dr." Applause filled the room. Victor walked onto the stage, smiling, waving modestly. He accepted a framed certificate and a glass trophy, then stepped to the microphone. "I am deeply honored," he began. "This recognition is not just for me, but for my entire team." As he spoke, a movement near the side of the room caught Nora's eye. Maya, the journalist, slipped in with a cameraman from her paper's online channel. She nodded once toward Nora. The cameramen from the TV station adjusted their angles. Then, as he was about to finish, the double doors at the back of the hall opened with unusual firmness. A hospital board member hurried in, holding a phone, whispered urgently to another. Within seconds, a ripple of tension passed across the front row. The host approached the podium, whispering something to Victor. He frowned, confused, as the host turned to the microphone, pale. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host said, voice tight, we need to pause for a brief announcement." Murmurs filled the room. Phones lit up as people checked their screens. Under it was a photo of Dr. Hales, and, beside it, a photo of Nora in her uniform, taken from the hospital's staff page. As people read, the room's energy changed. Applause died. Whispering grew louder. The article detailed the timeline. Nora's initial observations, her documented notes, emails, testimonies from colleagues, and the sudden rebranding of the protocol as Hales's innovation. It included quotes from independent medical experts about ethical standards and research credit. It even mentioned the upcoming speaking tour Hales had been offered, sponsored by the drug company. At the end, it quoted Nora, without melodrama, "I'm not angry that he became successful." Someone in the audience gasped. A few turned to look toward the back, where Nora stood, calm and unmoving. On stage, Victor's face had gone ashen. It was a polite way of saying the crown had slipped. Cameras pivoted. The TV crew, sensing a bigger story, turned from the stage to the crowd, looking for the nurse at the center of it. Nora quietly stepped out of the hall before they could find her. This was not about her enjoying a public victory. It was about a man being forced to face what he had done. As she walked down the corridor, her phone buzzed with messages. Some from colleagues thanking her, others from her children who had seen the article online. Her steps felt lighter. The trap had sprung, not with shouting or anger, but with documentation, patience, and a well-placed spotlight. The weeks that followed were messy but necessary. The hospital launched a formal investigation. Nora was interviewed, this time in an official capacity, not as someone to be brushed aside. Other staff came forward, some reluctantly, others with relief, confirming her account of events. The board suspended him from his leadership role pending the outcome of the inquiry. Public trust, once his strongest asset, began to crumble. In the end, the investigation concluded that Nora's contribution had been substantial and foundational, and that he was asked to resign from his position as head physician. He kept his license, but his reputation was permanently damaged. Offers dried up. Invitations stopped coming. The hospital, under pressure from staff and public opinion, issued a public statement acknowledging Nora by name as the nurse who had first identified and systematically documented the life-saving protocol. They offered her a formal promotion, a role as clinical nurse specialist, with paid time dedicated to research and protocol development. More importantly, they gave her something that meant more than any title, a written, signed acknowledgement of her work. Nora accepted the role on one condition: that the hospital set up a new committee where nurses' observations and ideas would be formally collected, reviewed, and credited. "I don't want this to be just about me," she told the board. They agreed. Life didn't become perfect. Some colleagues avoided talking about the scandal. Others treated her with a new, cautious respect. She kept doing what she had always done, caring for patients, listening, seeing things others missed. At home, her mornings remained the same: the kettle, the music, the creak of the floor. But something inside her was different, stronger, settled. She no longer felt invisible. Years later, Nora would sometimes see Dr. Hales's name mentioned in small, neutral articles about retired physicians. The grand career he'd been building had never quite recovered. He worked for a time in a smaller clinic, away from cameras and awards, until he quietly left practice. She didn't waste much thought on him. Her energy went elsewhere. In her new role, she mentored younger nurses, teaching them not just how to insert IV lines or manage medications, but how to document what they saw, how to protect their ideas, how to speak up, and when to gather allies before challenging power. "Medicine is a team sport," she would tell them. The protocol she had pioneered, now properly credited, saved countless lives over the years. It was taught in training sessions and referenced at conferences. Whenever her name appeared in the footnotes of presentations or articles, she felt a quiet satisfaction. Not pride in being famous, but peace in knowing that the record was finally true. She would smile and shake her head. "I caught a man who forgot that truth matters more than applause," she'd say. On one particular evening, she sat on her balcony with a cup of tea, watching the sun set over the city. The hospital's silhouette stood in the distance, familiar and somehow friendlier now. Because revenge, she realized, had not been about destroying him. It had been about restoring balance, about making sure that the lives saved by her discovery were not used as stepping stones for ego and greed. In the end, her justice was not loud or cruel. It was cold, careful, and deeply moral. The kind that doesn't just burn a bridge, but rebuilds the right road. Thank you for listening. Do you think she went too far, or did she simply take back her justice? Share your thoughts in the comments.